evening, Chair and committee members. It is 7 p.m. if you'd like to begin.
All right, thank you, Lauren. I'm going to call to order the the Planning Commission meeting of October 19th, 2020. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Lemus. Here. Commissioner O'Nice.
Here.
Commissioner Hancock.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Murphy.
Here.
And Chair Moore.
Here. So we didn't have any minutes in our packet. So any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Chair Moore.
All right. So I have oral and written communication. The public is asked to state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to items not already agendized for discussion. Lauren, do you see anyone?
I have no public attendees tonight.
All right, so I opened up public comment and now I'm closing public comment. So we're going to go to matters at hand. And the first one is consideration of a resolution approving amendments to existing use permit for the Conservation Corps North Bay that would allow public drop-off of carpets and mattresses for recycling at 365 Blodgett Street. And that has a resolution attached to that. So can I go to staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Moore and members of the Planning Commission. My name is J.P. Harris, the planner with the City of Cotati. This application is a request for an amendment to the use permit that exists for 365 Blodgett Street. Requested control, and I'm trying to see if I have control of this PowerPoint. I'll give it a minute. This started out, Kyle, representing the Conservation Corps North Bay, and I were having a conversation, and both of us realized that they were collecting carpets and mattresses there, but they had a clause in one of their use permit resolutions that prohibited the public to drop off materials there. Previously, in 2009 and 2010, they were approved for a light recycling processing facility. They would go out and collect cans and bottles and glass and plastic and metal beverage containers, and then they would bring them back there for recycling, processing, and then distribute them off-site. But we did not permit them to be a drop-off facility for the public. And Lauren, I don't seem to have control, so perhaps you're going to have to do it. It says I can control it, but it's not letting me. One more, please. So where that star is, that is the location of, and that is a zoomed-in location of the site at Blodgett Street. Just to the west in this view is the city's corporation yard, and then surrounding it are other light industrial uses. Next slide, please. I already talked about this, which is that they have an existing use permit for a training facility. The Conservation Corps, in addition to doing recycling, as discussed in the staff report, they also do vocational training with generally younger adults. Next slide. So here is the proposal. They are proposing to collect for drop-off, public drop-off, carpeting and mattresses. They They would be stored in two non-permanent trailers. So these are just trailers that go on the back. They're like semi-trailers. One is 28 feet and the other is 52 feet. They would be swapped out weekly. And based on the numbers that Kyle and I discussed about how much they would be collecting, I'm expecting approximately 20 drop-offs per day, and that's for both carpeting and mattresses. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. There are conditions of approval that I'm including on page 24, and I want to make a couple changes. One of them is change to condition number 4, that should say. Number 3. It just should end with the words, whichever is sooner. It's asking them that they cannot have people just drop stuff off while they're not there. And then if someone does do that they immediately clean that up upon arrival or as requested by the city, but that should be whichever is sooner. So it's not like they can just leave it there until we give them a call. And then I'm also recommending another condition that they post a sign stating that no unattended drop-offs are allowed, as well as listing a phone number for people to call with complaints or concerns. Next slide, please. This is kind of a rough site plan. This actually is from the previous project in 2009. Most of it. Really what I want you to see is on the north side of this building as you're looking at it, where the trailers would be located. There's an existing loading dock area. That's where the 28-foot trailer would be, and then the 53-foot trailer would be just adjacent to that. And actually, if you were to go out to the site today, you would see the 53-foot trailer. And actually, Lauren, if you could go to the next slide. This is from Blodgett looking east, and you can see the trailer parked on the side of the building there. I'm not sure if that one, I believe that's for mattress collection, the long one, and Kyle can correct us if he's here, but that's where that one belongs, and then the other one would be to the right, behind what you see as a gate there. Traffic is able to still continuously maneuver around the building. No parking is affected by this, nor does it generate a parking need. It would simply be an amendment to their use permit to allow people to come up to what you're looking at right here, this area of their driveway, to drop off carpeting and mattresses. I will say, I live on a rural road, and it is very common and a weekly occurrence to see carpeting and mattresses and other furniture dumped there. So there is a need for this. There's a fee if you were to go to the dump with any of this. You'd be paying at least $30. So this hopefully discourages people from dumping mattresses in the creeks and in the ditches and alongside the road, and offers them a recycling alternative. And this is consistent with our general plan, which has several elements, which I list in the staff report, promote facilitating recycling services and diverting trash from the landfill to areas where it can be recycled. I will say also, there is no recycling done at this facility, so this is simply a collection point. And these are then driven away to a facility where they then do the recycling. I'll also say that Kyle is here tonight, as well as another member of the Conservation Corps, so they're available to answer any questions that any of the commission might have. And with that, I'll close, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. Do we have any questions? I'll go to Neil. Are you on, Neil?
Yeah, no questions from me.
All right. Steve, do you have any questions?
Not real questions, but a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
I believe this project will, the most important thing about it is to stop the illegal dumping that we see that blights our community.
I agree. All right. Brittany, do you have anything?
I just had a quick question out of curiosity. Is the expectation that it's mostly residents that would bring carpeting and mattresses here, or are there businesses that are affiliated or have some sort of partnership to bring these items here? I was basically just wondering if it's mostly residential vehicles or if there were some sort of commercial vehicles that drop stuff off at this location.
I'm gonna let Kyle answer that. I got the numbers I had, I'm not sure if it included both residential and commercial, so I'll let Kyle respond to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. This is Kyle with Conservation Corps North Bay. For the most part, it is residential units that are being dropped off. There are a couple businesses, like 1-800 Got Junk and those types of businesses that drop off frequently, but the majority is residents.
Thanks, Kai.
Sylvia, do you have anything?
Well, now that he said that 1-800 Junk drops off things, is there like a fee for businesses and then residents it's free, or is there a fee for everyone? That's one question. Is it open to all residents in Sonoma County or just Roanoke Park, Cotati? Those are kind of my two questions I had.
Thanks.
Yeah, so there's no fee for anyone dropping off. It's completely free. We do have a unit limit. It's a 5-unit limit now during COVID. So it kind of inhibits businesses from taking over the program. And we do prioritize residents dropping off over accommodating businesses just dropping off a large amount of mattresses. So.
Kyle, I had a question. This is Lisa Moore. So when you say 5 units, is that mattress and box springs together?
That's correct. Yeah. So it's 5 units a day. Yeah. So
10 items altogether.
Oh no, it's 5 total, including the box springs.
Okay, that's what. Okay, and that was my question actually that Brittany asked. Was were you going to take commercial and residential? Okay, I'm going to open this up to, if nobody else has any other questions of the applicant or staff, I'm going to open this up to public comment, if there's any.
Chair Moore, at this time we still don't have any attendees.
All right, then I'm going to close public comment. And does anyone have anything they want to say about this before we make a motion? Okay, well, I just want to say one thing is I'm thrilled that you're still doing this. I think there's such a need for this in my line of work. I find I deal with illegal dumping all the time. So this is really a great service. So I appreciate it that it's here in Cotati. And on that, I just need someone to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. This is Sylvia. So, so I make a motion that the Planning Commission of the City of Cotati approve modifications to a use to allow mattress and carpet collection at an existing train light recycling processing located at 365 Lodges.
Okay. And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Well, Lauren, you can pick one of them.
Neil's more handsome than I am. So
Well, I was just going to mention I did hear Neil first. So I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Sure, thank you.
Committee Member Lemus.
Yes.
Excuse me, Commissioner Lemus.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill.
yes.
Commissioner Hancock.
Yes.
Vice Chair Murphy.
Yes.
Chair Moore.
Yes. All right, thank you. So we're going to move on to to item 2, which is a regional housing needs assessment allocation program. Can I get a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Moore, members of the commission. I am going to request control, see if I have any better luck than JP Harry's. So this is Noah House, Community Development Director, and the item before the commission this evening is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, update. And I am having the same, oh, there we go. Okay, so just for a little bit of background, and I know many of the commissioners have seen some of this information, and so it'll just be a little bit of a review. But staff is providing this to inform the public as well as the commission, kind of in light of some of the significant changes and issues, and then also to start folks thinking about the pending and upcoming housing element update. So as the commissioners are well aware, for decades the state has identified the number of housing units that each community needs to construct in order to meet the statewide need. And this is all income levels, housing units are all income levels, and this is called RHNA, or the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. We're currently in the 5th housing element cycle, which goes from 2015 to 2023, and we're starting to look at the 6th cycle, which will begin in 2023. And the critical element of this is a whole new process, as we've been talking about for the last year. There's a lot of legislation that's been coming down from the state. I'm going to touch on it in a minute. And as a part of this process, staff has worked with all other 100+ cities of the Bay Area on what's called the Housing Methodology Committee, through the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, to come up with a process to allocate all of the housing units being allocated to, or being identified for the Bay Area throughout all of the various communities, the counties and cities. So the ABAG region, the Bay Area, has been given their allocation of 441,000 and change units from the state, which is about 135% increase over last housing element cycle's allocation, so the 5th cycle's allocation. One of the things that's important to touch on is it was really critical for ABAG MTC staff that the Plan Bay Area, or 2050 Blueprint, it's called both, be incorporated into the process. And there is legislation that says that they have to be consistent with each other, the methodology and the regional planning document. So adding to this background, and we've talked about this over the last year and a half or so, but really it's been going on for several years, and a lot of changes have been coming down in state law to try to spur the development of new housing units in response to the housing crisis that we are all experiencing in California. So with regards to housing elements and the annual reporting, that process is almost completely rewritten, and there's been significant changes to summarize. It's worth noting, but I think most people would understand that everybody's RHNA has been increased significantly, and that's every community in the whole state of California. Some of the other laws have limited the ability of cities and counties to downzone their properties. There's a no net loss provision. As you all are well aware, there's new rules around ADUs, and the city's been working to update our code to make sure we're consistent, and thank you to Senior Planner Harry's for leading the charge on that. There's also some requirements to make more housing development by right. There's made some changes to the Housing Accountability Act. There is some requirements that in certain circumstances, multifamily housing be allowed by right, even at very high density levels. This is pushing us to identify the need for some objective design guidelines to influence that, and that's something that the department committed to creating with this year's budget, and we are moving forward with that, just so the commission and the public can understand that that will be coming. And relatively uniquely, is the state has made all of these changes. They've also really allocated what I would identify as a significant amount of funding to cover the cost of this. And The city of Cotati has been successful in getting 2 grants to support this, SB2 and more recently a LEAP grant, and these total $220,000 to the city. And so there is some funds available. We will be using outside consultants, I imagine, but we're also doing our best to try to utilize this funding internally with the department, backfill some of the budget impacts we've had through COVID-19. And so that's how you've seen us allocating and prioritizing some of this work internally, and senior planners, JP Harris's accessory dwelling unit ordinance is a good example of that. So I love this graphic, and I stole it from a presentation at the APA conference 2 years ago, but I just wanted to provide it back in this presentation. You all have seen it, but this is just an artist's rendering of kind of some of the various legislation that's come out of Sacramento. This was just in 2019 as of April, so I just like the context that it provides. And so jumping into tonight's item, as I mentioned, staff participated as a part of the Housing Methodology Committee, began meeting in October 2019. As a part of this presentations that we would receive from ABAG staff, they were really prioritizing the use of the Plan Bay Area, and what ended up resulting in that discussion is that the Plan Bay Area model data was determined to be used for the baseline that the Housing Methodology Committee started from as we were trying to allocate the various units across all 100+ jurisdictions in the Bay Area. We were able to come up to a methodology, and that was voted on September 18th last month, just almost 1 month ago to the day. And that methodology really prioritized putting housing near jobs and identifying these areas that are identified as high opportunity or high resource areas to provide some additional housing so future residents would have access to some of those opportunities and resources that those communities are fortunate enough to have. Unfortunately, using this data that's for a region-wide 30-year growth plan into our 8-year allocation methodology did create some anomalies for the rural North Bay that we identified through this process as we're starting to get our conceptual allocations of basically how many units are we going to have to build here in the North Bay. And we've been communicating that to ABAG MTC. There was a letter attached to the staff report that kind of voiced some of the specific concerns and was signed by the planning directors in all of the jurisdictions in Sonoma County. And that was sent to the executive directors of MTC and the regional planning director. And so we are trying to use this process to voice these concerns before the allocations are finalized, because obviously we want these decisions to be based on good data. We really, I think, holistically agree with the methodology that was created over the last year and a half or so, or year, I guess. But it's pretty critical that that methodology be based on accurate data. And ABAG NTC staff has given us a little bit of extra time to try to resolve this data issues, but that puts a lot of pressure on the individual cities to communicate their issues and specifically what their problems are. And again, there's more specifics in the letter, but I'm happy to answer any questions. But getting kind of to the meat of this is, what does this really mean for Cotati and Sonoma County? Highlighting Cotati here, last cycle, the cycle we're in currently, the state and ABAG allocated us 137 single or residential units across all income levels that Cotati needed to build to do our part. The projected increase, which every city or every community is seeing increases generally, but the projected increase is 97% increase over those levels to about 270 units for Cotati. But one of the things that we've really identified is this unincorporated Sonoma, and I'm sorry I don't have it highlighted, but if you can see the percentage increase, almost 1,000% increase to the unincorporated county communities. And this is kind of getting to the point that staff was trying to make with regards to some of the unintended consequences that the choice to use this data may have had for North Bay rural areas, because that's not good planning. That's not prioritizing the city-centered growth and the access to transit that basically we've been touting here in the North Bay for the last 20 plus years as the direction that we're choosing to grow in. And so we're now wanted to highlight this for all the members of the community to understand what's happening, but then also to take the time to really correct this data before our allocations are finalized. So that will not happen for another year. And let me go on to the next steps. So the ABAG Executive Board voted to adopt this methodology on October 15th. They now have to send that to the state. So the Housing and Community Development Department, HCD, they have to review the methodology for this set of statutory objectives that the legislature has created for the RENA process. And obviously this includes things like preserving agriculture and open space and focusing growth close to where amenities are located and furthering the fair housing efforts to both minimize kind of gentrification or dislocation issues, but then also provide, again, as we mentioned earlier, access to some of the higher resource areas for members of all income levels. We've identified that some of the blueprint data seems to be pushing away from these, and so we're going to continue to have these conversations with ABAG to finalize and kind of sharpen their pencils, hoping that the specific allocations we get more correctly influence these things. And it's important to note that right now, growth that's in a sphere of influence is being targeted for counties, but really it's anticipated to meet the city need into the future as we grow. So that's one of the areas where we want some more conversation and dialogue with ABAG. And then obviously we all are documenting this process very well, just on the outside chance that we need to file an appeal with the state to kind of further make some efforts to correct these issues that have been identified. So I understand it's a lot of information, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Staff will be providing this update to the City Council as well, but I wanted to end here, take your questions, take your comments. I'll forward any of them on up to the City Council in my presentation, and I thought this slide that shows all the various zoning districts in the city would be a good place to end on. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thanks, Noah. Why don't we start with Sylvia this time? Do you have any questions, Sylvia? Staff?
No questions. Just it's kind of shocking, especially with the wildfire factor, and how some of the construction may not be kind of doable according to their plan that they're kind of proposing. I was just a little surprised.
Yeah. Brittany?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I don't know if I maybe wasn't connecting the dots here, but when you guys talked about the methodology and prioritizing housing near jobs, I wasn't sure how that seemed like a bit of a disconnect with the majority of housing taking place in unincorporated areas. So I wasn't sure if there was a way they were connecting the two, or they just don't have to do with one another.
No, that's an excellent comment, as was Commissioner Lemus's. That's one of the things that we're trying to highlight, basically saying, the HMC, the Housing Methodology Committee, prioritized these things, but what seems to have happened is an unintended consequence of choosing to go with this baseline data from ABAG MTC, that we need them to sharpen their pencils a little bit more with their data analysis that's feeding into their growth model and their projections, and before they finalize their plan. And it is worth noting that the Plan Bay Area is still draft, which is also another issue we had with using it, but we were a small fish in a big pond, and so the committee members at large voted to choose that data.
Okay.
So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Interesting.
Steve, do you have anything?
I agree with Sylvia that it seems to be pulling in two directions. One loosening because of the fires, and then this evening's briefing. I'm concerned about that, but I suspect over time that will smooth itself out.
All right, Neil, any questions, comments?
Yeah, I've got I think I got two, and one's similar to what everybody else has been talking about. But the first one, I mean, for the market-driven build, as I understand it, how would this apply to Cotati, and particularly the Cotati station projects that have been on and off or being discussed? Would they be where we would potentially meet our numbers?
So, as a city, you're granted these numbers, your arena allocation, and then as a part of your housing element update, so that's going to be the next step that it's going to be a citywide effort. We identify how we're going to accommodate that growth, and that's an excellent assumption or kind of leap to go to is the Cotati Station project, or that area around SMART is one of the areas we've identified as higher density, as is the downtown specific plan. So those are areas where we are likely to see the city targeting growth. One of the issues is that the new legislation that's come out of the state makes it very challenging to reuse sites from previous housing elements. So we have done, from my standpoint, we have done good planning as a community and identified the areas where we want our growth to go. Unfortunately, we haven't seen some of that growth occurred yet. But the state has been somewhat frustrated by the lack of development and housing projects city or statewide. And so some of the more recent legislation makes it very challenging for cities to reuse some of their sites because there's a perception that maybe they are not ripe for development, or they have impacts or limitations that are stopping development from occurring. So we're starting to look at that process now, but we do anticipate it to be a little bit of some gymnastics in order for us to reuse sites, or potentially we might have to rezone some additional properties to bump up their densities to meet these state mandates.
Interesting. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for the explanation there on that. That's certainly an interesting potential drift on it. So the other question I think is related to what other people were saying, but more from we have our sphere of influence around the city and an area that we have a view on it. But is that an area that there could be some arm wrestling over with the unincorporated areas? Would that be something that the county would sort of say, well, gee, these are our areas, and we'd okay something growing in on that it allows them to meet their numbers, but in fact it wouldn't meet what our views are?
That absolutely could happen. Previously, cities and counties were allowed to kind of work together and take joint credit for some of the units that may be developed just outside the city limits, but within a sphere of influence. But again, some of the new legislation has limited the ability to do that. So that's one of the reasons we're really taking a hard look at the data countywide to try to help the county not be stuck with a 1,000% increase in their growth, where they have zero, in some situations, zero infrastructure to support that growth. There's no sewer and water infrastructure in a lot of portions of the unincorporated county. And so it absolutely is teeing up what could be seen as somewhat of a conflict.
Thank you.
I have a question, Noah. With the lack of redevelopment money and projects like the bridge project and Ryan Lane and things like that, are we seeing more projects come in, or is it still kind of on hold?
That's a great question too. So, and I would just, all of you all have been very, very good, asking very good questions, and I really appreciate it because it shows you have a good understanding of these really complex issues. But along with all of the changes in the regulations affecting these things, the grant funding rules and processes have also been changing, what some people would say at the last minute. And so it's making it very challenging for our affordable housing projects to secure funding. The tax credit program, which is a grant that basically allows tax credits to be forward funded and then sold on the open market to private companies. That funding then would go to support what used to be affordable housing projects, and then the companies got a break on their taxes, so it was a win-win. This last round, the rules were changed, what some people have described at the last minute, and allowed a lot more market rate housing projects to apply and be competitive for that funding. And so, as a result of that, a lot of affordable housing projects that were, a year ago were considered to be shoo-ins for those funds didn't receive any. And so there's a lot of change and issues with getting projects funded. All that being said, we are still seeing strong demand for residential development and residential growth, and we are still getting a lot of inquiries. We haven't seen any formal applications filed yet, but we are working with several architects and developers on projects that we anticipate coming in.
All right, thank you, Noah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want any other comments?
I've got another question for
Sure.
Noah. Yeah. Hey, so I know there's an awful lot sort of going on, and but a lot of us have been getting out and walking. And a year ago, I guess there was a commitment to do the bicycle and pedestrian plan update. I'm just
Yes.
wondering, Noah, with all the other juggling that's going on, if where that might have got to, and particularly.
Go ahead.
Well, particularly because of Caltrans and 116, that if we've got a disconnect with our planning, and those areas that I've identified across 116 that are disconnected as far as pedestrian access, that's my main area that I'm kind of, really asking about. I know we have would foot into a bigger plan, but pedestrian and bicycle update plan. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so we did commit to doing that in the budget. So we, when we identified the projects we want to do this fiscal year, that is one of them. We have not been able to gain much traction on it to date, as the commission is well aware, but that is one of our priorities for this fiscal year. So that goes all the way through July 1st, 2021. So I don't have a set schedule yet, but it is something that is on our radar and in front of us, and it is a priority for the department.
Okay, great to hear it. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Mute, unmute. Does anyone else have anything? All right, then thank you, Noah, for the update. We're going to go on to reports by staff.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I don't have much more to add. I will just say, the department continues to prioritize getting our, supporting our applicants and supporting the community. We've been spending a lot of time with the business community trying to work out their issues and see what we can do to help them. We do anticipate getting a parklet built downtown in November, so the parking areas in front of Redwood Cafe are going to be utilized for some outdoor dining. The city has purchased some tents that will be installed to try to weatherize that outdoor dining. We have also worked with some of the non-restaurant bars with trying to help them kind of change their business model to serve food and create some outdoor areas. And so you'll see a tent in front of Spanky's and Friar Tuck's as well as Cotati Coffee. They're going to get a small tent. So we're doing what we can to support the business community as they continue to grapple with the COVID-19 impacts. And so just folks in the community will continue to see some changes. And we're really trying to be supportive of outdoor dining and basically give these folks options to operate under the health limitations to protect everyone during the COVID pandemic.
Thank you, Noah.
That's all. Yeah, that's all.
All right. Any reports by the commission? Okay. Moving on to items received after the agenda was posted.
Nothing further, Chair Moore.
All right, then if that's it, then we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Steve, did you want to chat real quick?